And here we are with something that's never been done before. Dad and his two sons all on camera for a half hour talking about life. So we're really looking forward to this today. Dad, Dean Kruse, thanks for being here today.
Thank you, my son.
And Stewie, thank you for being here.
Thank you, my brother.
Dad, I want to start with you. You've been through a lot lately. And you wanted two boys who were auctioneers, and they were. You want to talk about how that was your dream and how you coerced us, convinced us that we should be auctioneers and what you were thinking?
Well, I guess when my father was young, he wanted his brother to go into the farming business with him. His name was Harold. And he got killed in a combine accident with my father running the tractor, and it really bothered him a lot. So when the first son come along, which was me, you're the number one son of the number one son of the number one son of the number one son, and we don't know. From there, we don't know.
You used to tell me all the way back to Adam.
Well, it could be.
But that doesn't mean favorite. Number one doesn't mean favorite.
Yeah, he thinks he's the favorite. He says it all the time.
Doesn't mean,
he just preached to the whole church that he's a favorite.
But you're number one. Anyways, my dad had me call him Russell, and I was sort of his adopted brother. And we had a lot of fun growing up, and so I always was going to go in the business that he wanted to be in. Mm-hmm. And when he wanted to be a farmer, I was wanting to be a farmer. Then he got to be an auctioneer, so I thought, I want to be an auctioneer. So I become an auctioneer, and then, you know, like the Swiss watchmaker, I thought my sons ought to be auctioneers too.
Do you remember how you used to imitate Dad selling the Beatles Bentley for a world's record?
Oh, yeah.
Can you do it right now?
I don't think I can now. I think I've forgotten it by now, but I used to do that all the time.
You were really good at it.
Yeah.
How old would you have been then?
What would that have been? Early 80s, probably?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I think it was 81. 80 or 81.
About 8 years old or so.
Yeah, you were really good at that.
And he had real curly hair.
He had very curly hair, and you were probably 3-4 inches taller than you are now.
Probably.
Dad, tell everybody how you taught us how to auctioneer the filler words, and you add the syllables.
Anybody can learn to be an auctioneer.
Let's hear
it's
that.
Easy. It's like riding a bicycle. You just soon you learn how to do it, and you can do it without thinking. But they start you with no filler words, just 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 2, 3, 3, 3, 4, 4, 4. Then one word fillers. 1, bid the 2, bid the 2, bid the 3, bid the 4, bid the 4. $1, $1, $2, $2, $3. Then two word fillers. Bid the 10, bid the 20, bid the 20, bid the 30, bid the 40, bid the 50. And then three word fillers. Give me 20, give me 20. That's two, isn't it?
I don't know. I'm so
But you could go up to like 5. Will you give me the? Wait, 10. Will you give me the 30? Will you give me the 20? 10, will you give me the 20? Will you give me the 30? Will you give me the 40? Will you give me the 50?
Wow.
And you can learn it real easy.
Stu, you want to auction for everybody real quick?
25 would it be 50, would it be 75, would it be 100, would it be 125, would it be 150? So
that's good. That's excellent.
I was taught by the best.
That's exactly right.
Can you do it? Let me hear you.
Oh, I don't know.
No, just have a quick one.
50, 75. Would I give $100? Would have been 125? Would I give 150?
Your hands are important.
Yeah, they really are. Zig Ziglar says you want people to look at your face.
Yeah, that's right.
So we did the auction business together. You brought us up to be Notre Dame fans.
Oh, yes.
And Stewie, you're a huge Notre Dame fan today, right?
Yep. I'll admit it.
In fact, Stuart has a man in his church that played with the Four Horsemen.
He played for Frank Leahy.
Yes.
Back in the heyday of Notre Dame.
It was great to talk to him.
And Leahy's one of only two coaches who were undefeated in the regular season before coming to the Notre Dame job, right?
Yeah, he coached at Boston College. Was undefeated the year before he took the Notre Dame job.
And the other
he played
coach?
for Rockney.
He played for Rockney?
Yeah.
Yes.
And then the other coach who was undefeated?
Brian Kelly.
And you're looking forward to what he's going to do with Notre Dame?
Yeah, not looking too good right now, but I think it'll get better.
All right. What do you have a favorite story about Dad, either in the auction business, a funny story like when he had all those ribs in his hands, or anything like that? Does a story come to you about Dad and maybe the Auburn auction or something?
Funny story about Dad? There's probably too many to tell. I remember this is just kind of a family thing we did when we always used to go up fishing to Canada for, I don't know, several years there in a row we went. And I was still pretty young, probably still in high school or just out of high school. And Dad used to like to have a cigar once in a while, but he didn't like me to know that. And so
Stewie likes confessing other people's sins, Dad.
Right.
Or maybe it's not a sin, but
I remember finding a cigar in his tackle box, and I told you about it, and you said ask him about it. And we were in a cabin where we had different rooms, but you and I shared a room, and there's kind of an opening in the middle. So Dad's room was off to the side, and Russell, our Grandpa Russell was also there. And so I asked you about it, and you said, ask Dad about it, see what he says.
And we're all in bed, right, in our separate rooms?
So I said,
you
Dad, did you enjoy your cigar out on the lake today? And he said, what are you talking about? And all of a sudden, Grandpa Russell yells out, oh, he was choking me off with those things. I can't believe he smokes those. So Russell was into confessing other people's sins, too, I
think. Russell used to say, I could really keep a secret, but it's all those people I tell, they can't keep it.
He used to tell me, they told me to tell nobody, all right? And you're nobody. So here it goes. Fishing trips. We had a lot of fun on the fishing trips.
Oh, yeah.
Don't you think you and I used to catch more than Dad and Russell?
Yeah, but Dad's always looked bigger because he taught us how to hold the fish up closer to the camera. He makes it look bigger. And then he'd always squint his teeth, squint his eyes and grit his teeth so it looked like he was barely able to hold it up.
Pine Portage Lodge. I've been going there 55 years.
You're not even 55 years old.
Well, thank you. The guy at the fair the other night guessed me at 56. It made my day.
Is that... Did you get a wild tie or something because he couldn't guess?
I got some kind of a puppy dog we gave to Logan. Or no, to Kinley, Stuart's son.
That's terrific. Dad, you've had all kinds of crazy things happen to you at auctions.
Oh, my, yes. Had a guy die, or almost die right in front of me.
Tell that.
Well, we were at, selling a house in a city called Wocutville, and we said, buy this property. It's one of the best deals we've ever sold, and ladies and gentlemen, now's the time you got to bid right now. And this guy had never bid before, standing in the front row, put his hand up. And nobody else bid, and about 3-4 seconds later, we said, sold. And he looked at me like this, and he started backing up 3 or 4 steps and just fell over backwards completely. I thought he died. He laid there. And the people started getting around him, and one lady said, put a sack over his head, and somebody put a sack over his head and held it around his throat. I thought, man, they're choking him to death. I mean, I knew nothing. I didn't know what to do, and somebody called the ambulance, and they come loading him up, and the way he went to the hospital. And the owner turned to me and he said, is my house sold? I said, that is a very good question. Let me go talk to the runner-up bidder. And thank goodness the runner-up bidder said, I'll take it at my price. So, but we couldn't sell it to him because we didn't know if the other guy wanted it or is he going to live or going to die. Mm-hmm. And I guess the next morning he come conscious. And the first thing he said is, I want that house. Tell that man I want that house. So he bought it. I went over and he signed the purchase agreement with one arm out of the oxygen tent.
Dad, are you serious?
No, I'm serious.
Were you there waiting on him?
Well, I wanted to go quick. I was afraid,
Do you remember the story about the Bibler funeral home auction?
Oh, my.
Kelsey had a volleyball match the other day in that area of the state, and there was a Bibler on the team, and it made me think of that Bibler funeral home auction. You want to tell that story?
Well, it takes 4 or 5 minutes, but is that all right?
Oh, yeah.
You got the time today?
Sure.
All right. Well, I had a phone call, and this lady said, I own the Bibler Funeral Home in Warsaw, Indiana, and I'd like you to come over and sell it at auction. And I said, is it going business? She said, yes. I said, okay.
It's a going business.
So we drove over there, Daniel and I.
People were dying to get in.
My brother Daniel and I drove over, and Daniel, as you know, is a real emotional guy.
Yes.
And so we went over there, and I told her, I said, is there anybody else owning any of this? She said, well, my son died, and my husband died, and I'm the survivor of my husband, and I own half, and my daughter-in-law owns a fourth, and then my son, Louis Bibler III, owns a quarter also, so they each own a fourth. And I said, well, make sure they're all there. I said, okay. So we go over and we go in and sit down at the kitchen table. There's where a lot of deals are made. And I said, well, maybe we ought to take a tour of this place. And she said, well, I'm too old to go up and down the steps. I'm over 80, and my daughter-in-law's health isn't good here, and Lewis isn't here yet, so go ahead and look around yourself. So we're looking around. They got a room with 8 or 9 caskets in it, and we look at those, and it's like a big old 3-story home, brick with shutters. It kind of could be a haunted castle, I guess, if you wanted it to be. So we go downstairs in the basement, and we look around, and we open this door, and all of a sudden, this truly happened. Bam! Lightning hit and knocked out all the power.
Are you serious?
I'm serious. Daniel and I are standing in this room with no lights. Never been down there before. We think we can get our way back. And Daniel says, Dean, we got to get out of here. I don't want to be in this room any longer. So we found the door and got out of the room in the bigger room, and we could see some light, and we went up the stairway and got out of the basement, and we got up there, the lights come back on. So, you know, our hearts are pumping pretty good right then. And we sat down at the table, and Louis isn't there. She said, well, I'm kind of embarrassed he knew about this, but he doesn't want to sell this funeral home. And I said, well, if you talk to your lawyer, I think 3/4 of you can force him to sell it. Pretty soon, the garage door opens. Now, they have like a 8-car garage with ambulances and their nice big Cadillacs and everything for the limousines. And this Louis walks in. He's got a beautiful dark blue suit on, really, really nice, and a nice tie and shirt, and he has gym shoes on.
David Letterman.
Yep. So she said to him, Louis, sit down here, we got to sell this property. And he says, I'm not signing, I am not going to sell, and I am leaving the premises immediately. This is the Bibler Funeral Home, it always will be, and that's the way it's going to be, and I'm leaving. He went out and slammed the door. I sat there a little bit. I said, well, do you two want to sign the agreement? And said, yeah, we'll sign. So they signed. I went home. I didn't know what to do. And so we had the auction. Well, Lewis, who didn't want to sign it, scheduled a funeral for the very same time as the auction. So we talked about it. We didn't know what to do. So they said, Dean, you wrote it. You got to work the door. So I was out at the door. The auction started at 6 p.m. and the funeral started at 6 p.m. We moved the auction out to the big garage and set up chairs out there. It worked out okay. But when I was working the door, people would come and I'd say, are you here for the funeral or for the auction? And the relatives of the poor dead man just about, oh, they really told me off and everything else. And I said, well, I didn't do this on purpose. Somebody else did this. So we had the auction. It sold pretty good. Larry Nellens bought it. He wanted it for a real estate office.
People just don't believe us about our dad. The stories, the way he's lived. I mean, how would you describe him?
Describe Dad?
Yeah, or how do you describe him to other people and they don't like understand? They think he's this guy that's all about making a lot of money, you know, that kind of thing. How would you describe him?
I don't think Dad cares so much about making money as he does. He is really excited when he signs a deal.
Yes.
Whether he's going to make a lot of money or a little money, if he can get somebody to sign it,
that's it.
That's it. He's one. It's sort of like where we get our competitive nature in sports. We got it from him. I think he sees the sales arena as a competitive sport, and if he gets the signed deal, he's won the game.
Yeah. Michael Douglas is a little bit like that in the Wall Street sequel.
You know, he was at our Indy Suite one year, a few years ago.
Michael Douglas?
Yeah, he and his wife with Andy Granatelli. Yeah.
Really?
Yeah, he was really a nice fellow.
Really?
Yeah.
I just
and
think
she is beautiful.
Is she?
Oh my, yes. Yeah.
But I will say
Catherine
this
Zeta-Jones.
about Dad that people probably don't know is one of the reasons that he doesn't always make as much money in a deal as somebody else might is because he does truly have a heart for the person that's selling.
Yeah.
That he wants to legitimately help them in their situation.
Right.
If they're down and out, because a lot of times when people are selling at auction, they're at their lowest point because they have to sell. And Dad, probably to a fault, has compassion for those people to where if he doesn't make as much money on this one as the next guy, that's okay as long as he's helping that individual who needs it.
Exactly.
It's something that people don't understand about him, I think.
That's true.
I could always make money, but I'm keeping it. That's something else.
We're going to come back to that, guys. I want to get to that. Remember the guy that we had come in, the author, I think it was Ralph Mattson, came in and he did a preliminary assessment on our 3 personalities. And this was all for me to better understand you and what was going on in your life. And I wanted to create an environment where you would stay and be in the business. And I felt like Dad was pushing you, you know, and maybe like pushing you away and all that. Do you remember what the guy said about each one of us? He had a hand gesture for each one of us.
Yes, I do. For me, he said, as I've analyzed Stuart, he says, I've figured out who he is and what motivates him. And he said, I've given you a hand gesture here to remember it. He said, this is someone's life. This is Stuart. And he said, when Stuart's done in somebody's life, he wants it to look like that, where he's left an impact in someone's life. He cares about other people and he wants to impact their life. We said, oh, that's nice. That sounds good and everything. He said, with Dean, he said he is a control guy, but he's not a real detail guy. And so he'll let things go for a while until he decides it's time to step in and right the ship. And he said, so he'll let things kind of go sway a little bit away. He says, but then this is his hand gesture, is this. That he'll let it go, but then he'll come in and he'll mess it all back up to get the ship righted again.
That is so true.
And we laugh because we'd been in marketing meetings where we'd be going several weeks with no sign of Dad, and all of a sudden he just comes in like a firestorm and yells at everybody, gets them all fired back up, and then leaves. And then we're left there picking up the pieces. But then Mitch, he said, Mitchell...
Oh, you can stop there. I wanted to ask Dad something.
No, let's hear Mitchell.
He said, Mitch also likes to control, but he does
when
it
he's,
in a...
Now, Mitch, we did interrupt. We did interrupt.
They can edit this later. He said that you do it a little bit differently where people maybe don't know they're being manipulated. And he said, for Mitch, it's this. He manipulates with finesse.
I remember he came and met with me first since I had made the contact with him. And he starts going down this road of control with me. And I stop him. I said, Ralph, stop. He goes, yeah? I said, that's my dad. You're reading me my dad's assessment. And he goes, oh, no. You control, but you do it with finesse. Dad, you've been through a lot. I wanted to come back to that. In the last...
I beat the IRS.
Explain that.
In a local court and in a federal appeals court. In federal court locally and a federal appeals court.
And that had an impact on your business, but the effort to beat them had an impact on your business.
I won $1.5 million from them, but it cost me $750,000 to do it in 10 years. And 10 years, and I had everybody, including eBay, when they bought us, they kept the lawsuit out and said, that's your baby, but you ought to settle, you're going to lose. Says you can't beat them, but we did.
Well, everywhere I go, people ask me, you know, how's your dad doing? You sold the auction park. And you're
for the
working
third time.
Yep, and you're working through a bunch of other stuff.
Yes.
So why don't you just tell everybody how you're doing?
How I do it? Well, I put a lot of money, and I even put a second mortgage on my home, and I put about $5 million in my company to keep it going. And then I got to thinking, you know, I'll put every dime I have in here, and I still need more. Then what would I do? So I decided the best thing was I'm 69 years old, and I've traveled 4 or 5 days a week my whole life. Never been home, never watched you guys' games. In fact, I paid for your ball games to be on radio, and then my niece, Shannon, would put the phone by the radio, and I could listen to you playing ball. You guys had a good team that one year when you went down to the finals. But anyways, I think when you made that foul shot with 3 seconds to go when you won the sectional, my head hit the ceiling when I jumped up and down in a hotel room in Oakland, California. We're having an auction for Reggie Jackson.
Now, you were jumping on the bed, right?
No, it was a cheap hotel room. The ceilings were low. But I've had a lot of problems, so I finally decided, well, I better hang it up. And I didn't get any money, net money to me, but I got rid of millions of dollars worth of debt by selling the company to RM, which is one of the largest auction companies in the car business. They'll do over $200 million this year. They're worldwide. I started them in business. I started them all. But anyways, I wanted this to continue to be a great sale, and because there's so many charity groups that make money out of it, and it's good for... I just talked to a guy that runs a restaurant in Auburn last night, and he said, you know, that Labor Day weekend I make more money than I make the rest of the year. He said people line up all the time to be in my place. It's tough. Over 3,000 automobile dealers went out of business in '09, they were my customers. And so I got caught by not seeing it quick enough. And I was, of course, I'm aggressive. I'm a ridge runner. And I was giving guys credit for 3 weeks, 4 weeks that I dealt with for 20 years. All of a sudden, they can't pay. Boom, can't pay. So that's where I am. So, you know, there you are, and here I am.
What do you plan to do next?
That's a very good question. I'm going to try to design a program where I can make some money. I've always been able to make money.
Well, you're one of the best salesmen, if not the best, ever walk the face of the earth, and we all know the best auctioneer.
I don't know about that, but I'm easy to sell myself.
You got 2 sons who were auctioneers with you for a season, and now they're both ministers.
Yes.
You would say that you felt the calling of God, right? And I felt like I did. That still small voice that just keeps coming up throughout life. Have you looked at why both of us are doing that versus being auctioneers and in the business with Dad, and how that flowed?
Well, I don't know so much about that as much as I think both of us would look back on the training that Dad gave us to be to care about people, to not be judgmental towards people. That is something Dad taught us. And to be in front of crowds and be in front of large groups of people has all helped us in being in the ministry. And I think we owe a lot of thanks to him for allowing us to do what we did and the experiences that we've had that seasoned us. Because a lot of guys go into the ministry right out of college.
Right.
And by working with Dad all those years, that seasoned us, I think, to understand what the everyday person is going through in their life to be able to be in a more effective minister, I think.
Yeah, I might want to just say, I know you're tight for time, but on my brother's office wall it says, "Commitments made in stormy waters are forgotten in calm seas." I can tell you I went through a big storm and I'm getting closer to the Lord every day. It's been a big impression on my life, and I've started reading the Bible, praying, and really trying to live the life that you guys both want me to live.
And I would have to say we appreciate it so much. I know that you're highlighting and going through the whole Bible. You've read through the Bible several times in your life, right? You're doing that again.
Yes.
And then just your presence and your attitude and your demeanor in coming to our children's events. I told Kelsey, you don't understand. He's been to more of your sporting events than he's been to all of mine put together my whole life. In 1 year, exactly.
That's true.
And so I guess wherever you are today, we want you to catch from this little discussion with a father and his 2 sons relationship. And whatever you do, whether it's marketplace or ministry, it will all come down to a relationship vertically with God and then lived out horizontally with others. Thank you for being with us today. My dad is a piece of work. He always said that value is in the eye of the beholder. Well, when we were business partners, he came to me one day and said, "Hey, I'd like the company to buy for my use one of those new Suzuki Samurais. They're the best Jeep I've ever seen. I really want one, and they're only $49.99. That's right, $49.99. They're stacking them deep and selling them cheap." And I relented, and he got one. Well, it was delivered in the heat of the summer, and it was probably pushing 100 degrees on a Midwestern day, and we were out driving at the development of our new auction park, the first auction park ever created, and it was in Auburn, Indiana. Well, as we're riding along, I said, "Dad, I'm really upset about something." He said, "What's that?" I said, "You told me this was going to be $49.99. As the sweat starts dripping from my forehead. I said, "Dad, it was $16,999. I said, "I'm so tired of you telling me one thing and doing another. You take me a step at a time. In fact, Dad, it was you who coined the phrase, you don't make a cucumber a dill pickle overnight. You let it soak. Dad, you let me soak a step at a time. $16,999, Dad. That's not $49,999. You know how he is. He's just kind of deflected like my whole tone there. And he said, "But look, it's got a chrome hitch, and it's got a chrome this, and it's got the chrome on the side. When they started showing me the options, I just couldn't stop. I had to have them all." And by that time, sweat is just pouring. I'm soaking my undershirt. It's starting to come through my shirt, and I can feel it's going to go through my jacket and my suit. And I start messing around here on the dash, and I said, "Dad,
I'm so hot. Where's the air conditioning in this world's most expensive Suzuki Samurai? I didn't get that. What? Dad, you got everything, every single option. You are the most expensive Suzuki Samurai in the history of the world, and you didn't get air conditioning? That's crazy. Oh, but I love it. It's open in the free air. You gotta love it. Take your jacket off. I tell you what, Dad thinks that this thing is a collector's item. In fact, he claims that there's collector clubs of Suzuki Samurais all over the world, and he thinks it's going to be worth that $16,999 someday, and he still has it. You know what? I think I'm going to auction it right now. $100, $200. Anybody else want the $200? Oh, sir, I'm sorry, you're retracting your bid. Oh, I don't know what I'm going to do. I tell you what, Dad, value is in the eye of the beholder, and you love this.
Just like a collector car, each one of us needs restored to authenticity, to reflect the design of the designer. In order to do so, we need to surrender our old basket case of a life to Christ the Restorer. And we do that by saying, I can't, you can. Second, he takes us apart and piece by piece begins to restore our lives. And we're followed by a bunch of little I can't, you cans. And then finally, we surrender the new tragedies, the new triumphs. On our journey on Restoration Road, we get dinged, worn, torn, tattered, and faded, and it's another opportunity to return to the one who makes things new. What about you? Are you ready to fully surrender your heart, desires, and life to Christ as Savior and Lord and say, I can't, you can? Today might be the day that you draw the line in the sand, put the stake in the ground, and fully surrender your clay heart to Him.
179, and now 180. I got 179, I got 180,000. The reserve's off. Fire for her. Fire for her. At 181, time to give 182. And now 183. 183 again. 183, now 184. Who wants to bid 187,000? At 186, to give 187. 5, now 187. And now 188. Who wants to bid 193,000? $194,000. And now 200. Let's go to 300,000. Let's go, baby, let's go. Who wants him to bid again? That's $206,000. I'm going to get $207. It's only money that'll bring you happiness today.
You can watch any episode of The Restoration Road with Mitch Kruse at therestorationroad.com. Therestorationroad.com, where thousands of people each week are clicking on an episode and finding the power of restoration, and they share it with their small groups or their churches or just with a friend. We encourage you to do the same, and while you're at therestorationroad.com, check out our other helpful resources at mitchkruse.com.